asked to the entire team. Any member of the team may ask a question. The format of tonight's debate is similar to last night's debate. Each team will have a 3-minute opening statement. Each team will have 3 minutes to respond to questions. Questions may be asked individually of candidates or teams. However, the two other teams have the same opportunity, same 3-minute opportunity to respond. Each team has been given 2 rebuttal cards. Each team automatically gets 1 rebuttal per question. They have, in addition, 2 cards to use in each half of a debate. So it should foster some really good back and forth debate that we saw last night. This debate's also being live streamed on QTV, and that link can be found on Twitter and Facebook. So with that, let's get started.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming tonight. My name is Tristan Lee and I'm the VP Ops candidate for Team JDL, and I'm here with...
I'm Doug Johnson. I'm running for the position of President and CEO.
Mira Janine, VP University Affairs.
Alright, so I want to talk to you guys a little bit tonight about the AMS before we begin, just as our introduction. So as we all know, I mean, the AMS is a massive corporation. It does a lot of really, really great things for students here. As you know, it is a $16 million corporation, and as such needs to be managed very responsibly, and financial accountability is extremely important for this organization as a whole. One thing that I want to point out is that a lot of the money that goes into the AMS actually comes directly from student fees. So you guys are all paying this, as are we, into the AMS. So it's very important that we are spending this money responsibly. It's very important that there is a team running this organization that is able to do so and that has a good understanding of how the finances work so we can properly move forward in the coming years as well. To touch on a couple things that the AMS has done really, really well in the past as well, is that as a large corporation on campus, we have a lot of power and a lot of authority here as well. One really great thing that's happened recently is the signing of the operations and management agreements. And we now control the Student Life Center, which is the Queen Center, JDUC, Mac Brown, and the Grey House as well, which is pretty fantastic. We have complete managerial control of these buildings. I think next, I want to touch on kind of my experience with the society, because I think it does a lot of really great things for many different people. I've had a pretty unique one myself, having worked full-time here at one point. And I know that's not for everybody, but it has been the one for me for sure. On my first day, On my first day at Queen's, I actually grabbed an application to work at Common Ground Coffee House. Mira was actually my Gale at the time, and she had encouraged me to work for Wacom in my first year. I did end up working for Common Ground, which I know, as we talked about yesterday, paid off quite well. I had the opportunity to act as the head manager last year, in which I managed 125 staff, 5 assistant managers, some of which are here tonight actually as well, and a $1 million budget. I think something I want to touch on is that last year we made it really our goal to recreate this service and rebrand it as somewhere where everybody on campus would want to go at all times of the day. I think we were really successful. We actually were able to increase Kogro's revenue by about $200,000 and decreased its deficit by $60,000. 2 years ago, Common Ground was the service that had the largest deficit of any of the AMS services of $84,000. After our year there, we brought it back down to $25,000, and this year it will be making money under the oversight of this year's management team. So, thank you. That is my, I think, biggest experiences here. Something that has really changed, I'd say, my entire life. Something that I learned more from than I have in any other thing at this university, and I know that many other people can attest to that as well. And kind of to close, I wanted to say that given that we're in such a large corporation, it's completely student-run. It's very unique. There's nowhere else, I don't think, in this country where there is a $16 million corporation that can be run by a 19-year-old, although I'm 21. I think it's really important that you have an AMS executive team that you trust, and I really do think that based on our experiences, Team JDL can provide that for you. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bryor Snefjella, and my cord is stuck. There we go. All right. Again, my name is Bryor Snefjella. I am the Vice President of Operations candidate for Team RMS, and I'm here with...
Sean Renault. I'm the VP University Affairs candidate. And I'm Jeff McCarthy, the President and CEO candidate.
Now, just before I get into why I think I bring something unique to VP Ops, I want to talk a little bit about my experience at Queen's. I didn't think I was going to be able to actually ever attend university. My family lived for my entire life well under the federal poverty line. I was only ever able to come to Queen's because of because of a sizable entrance scholarship created by an alumni, Dr. Bert Wasmond. I'm eternally thankful for it. Now, because my family had never been to post-secondary education before, they were actually quite skeptical of it. So I came in really wondering, what's this all about? What is this place like? Especially in particular about Queen's. I wanted to know, does it live up to its reputation? Or, you know, what's really going on here? And after 4 years, I found that by and large, the reputation of this place is well deserved. This is a great institution. It's a great, it's a wonderful place to learn. It's a wonderful place to work. However, in my time here, I have also seen it fail to live up to its reputation in certain specific areas. So there is clearly more we can do. And that is what I want to do. I want to make sure that every student feels like the AMS is working for them and that Queen's wants them to be here. Now, what I bring to VP Ops, I think is best explained by my experience in an organization called the Canadian Improv Games. It sounds a little geeky, but I've spent 9 years of my life learning and teaching how to build teams, how to allow groups of people to work together to take ideas, build those ideas, tear apart other people's ideas constructively, and come up with a great idea collectively. I have taught this skill at conferences. I have taught this skill to Queen's staff members. And what I want to do as VP Ops is to build an excellent team here at Queen's. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to do it with Sean, with all his managerial experience, and Jeff, with all the great work he's done for Finers. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Duncan Peterson. I am the Vice President Operations candidate.
I'm Rico Garcia, and I'm the President and CEO candidate.
And I'm TK Pritchard. I am the Vice President University Affairs candidate.
And together, we all make up Team GPP. I guess when you think of the AMS, you can think of Common Ground. You can think of the AMS offices in the JDUC. You can think of Wacom or Queen's Student Chronicles. But when I think about the AMS, I think of the things that are written on these banners back here. I think about what the AMS represents and what the AMS can offer students in terms of making a difference and working for their peers to affect change. I think that's what the AMS can really bring to the student experience, not just a job, but an actual experience that kind of creates their own Queen's experience. And as we all know, the Queen's experience is unique to every single one of us. It's not a cookie cutter experience. We all have our own spot and our own activities and our own experience that we all kind of make our way through. I guess one of the most exciting things I find about the operations position for the AMS is the Student Life Center. It was recently put under AMS control this past summer when the O&M agreement was signed with the university and the SGPS. I think it's really exciting. It's the newest addition to our broad range of services and organization here. And I think it actually creates a big difference, and it creates a large opportunity for us to manage our Student Life Center, and it allows us to provide opportunities to students on a greater scale. I think it's absolutely amazing, the work that's been done this year. I guess before kind of going into the main questions here, I'll kind of give you kind of a taste of my experience here at Queen's and what I've learned so far through my Queen's experience. I've kind of worked my way up through ASSIS, the Arts and Science Undergraduate Society, from being a chair. Originally, I only wanted to be a chair just to kind of meet friends, learn about the society, and kind of see what Queen's had to offer me. I found my place there, and I've worked my way up through that organization, being a deputy commissioner, now I'm currently the vice president of ASSIS. As vice president, I'm responsible for overseeing the financial aspects of the society. Pretty much every budget I oversee, and I'm kind of involved with somewhat in their creation and development. It's a very diverse position. It's not as narrow as possibly managing a service. It's a holistic position where you're looking at the entire society. It has a broad range of goals that each commissioner brings, and helping them shape and fund those goals can be very challenging, but also very, very rewarding, with the idea that you can help fund those activities and projects and ideas to completion. And it's incredibly rewarding, and it's incredibly diverse experience. I think that experience will really help me in this position. I look forward to hearing from all the candidates, and good luck to everyone. Thank you very much.
We will move on to questions now. If anyone's watching online, which last night 400 people tuned in, if anyone would like to submit a question through Twitter, that can be done with the hashtag AMS vote. We'll read off the questions from the table here. If anyone from the floor would like to ask a question, just come up to the table. We have slips of paper. Mark has slips of paper. Just write out your question. We'll just check, make sure that's okay, and then you'll be able to ask it. Tristan Lee will be fielding the first question. All teams receive an equal 3 minutes to respond to a question. Each team has 2 rebuttal cards, as long as 1 rebuttal card with each question. So the first question will come from a current VP Operations, Ashley Egan.
Before asking my question, I definitely want to say good luck to everyone tonight. You are all doing a fantastic job, and I'm so glad to see you all up here. So we'll just start off with a very, very simple question. What do you think is the most essential AMS corporate-run service from each portfolio? So that being media, hospitality and safety, and retail. And you can only pick one from each portfolio.
Tristan.
Great, thank you for the question, Ashley. I'd like to preface this by saying that of the 10 corporate services that we have, it's very difficult to choose one that's the most important in any portfolio. I mean, every service does something different for every student here, and it's difficult for me as one person to choose which is the most valuable to everybody. Having said that, for the sake of this debate, to choose one of each, I'll start with media. I think the Journal is one of the most important services at this university, in that it really does keep the AMS accountable for all of its actions. It's important that we have somebody to be ensuring that the AMS is always acting responsibly and fiscally responsibly throughout the entire year. So I'd say the Journal definitely is one of the most important services at this school, in that it can really inform the entire student body of what goes on the inside of the AMS. To go on to hospitality and safety, I'm going to go with Queen's Walk-Home, I believe. I actually work there right now as a staff. Walk-Home is an extremely valuable service at this university. I can say, having worked there, it offers an incredible experience to 150 staff as well as 6 of the management team. Beyond that, though, Walk-Home is really the eyes and ears of campus security on campus throughout the entire night. Not only do we walk people home, ensure that people are able to get to their houses safely, but we can also be eyes on the campus when campus security cannot be around everywhere altogether. And then to move on to retail, I really do believe that Tricolor Outlet is a very valuable service at Queen's. Tricolor Outlet offers many different things to different students here. I mean, it was before Destinations, Tricolor Outfitters, and the used bookstore. It's very unique in that the used bookstore offers book consignment, which you can actually access through the university, as well as the Tricolor Express, which is a very unique bus service that picks up on campus. So those are different services that you can actually get from Queen's. Again, having said that, it's not necessarily fair, I would say, to choose which is of the most value to any student at this university, because I'm only one here. But yes, they're all very valuable in many ways. Thank you.
Please hold your applause to the end of each set of questions. It will just help us fit in more questions. So the next respondent will be Bryor.
So to start off, I think co-grow is a really important one because coffee, when you're a student, I think we all know that that is one of the only things that allows you to get through 4 years here. Media, absolutely. Journal, the Journal is really important. The Journal helps make sure that if we screw up, everybody knows, because they should know. And it helps make sure that, that all the awesome things that happen on campus, everybody knows about them. Obviously important. In terms of retail, PNCC, we need books and things to read to learn, so course packs and all of that, really great. It's also taken on increasing importance because of the copyright shift here at Queen's, very important. And in terms of safety, I would definitely say StuCons because they provide like that really basic safety that's needed at bars and special events on campus.
Duncan.
Thank you for the question, Ashley. Appreciate it. This is a very hard question. It's obviously all of our services are very valuable to the Queens community. For hospitality and safety services, I'd actually say Walk Home. Last year, Walk Home provided over 12,000 walks to the Queens community. It's an absolutely fantastic service that provides an essential security service to people walking home late at night. Provide security or can provide just a friendly conversation on the way back home. I think that's really valuable in the Queens community. For retail services, I'd say the PNCC. It provides an accessible service that provides accessible prices to students for presentations, copying, printing, and also course packs, which allows professors to provide their class with copyrighted materials that are necessary for their learning. For media services, again, I kind of echo the other two responses here. It would be the Journal. They're essential in keeping the student government accountable to every student on this campus. Without them, things would kind of gum up, I'd say. It's important to know what your student government is doing, where your student dollars are being allocated, and all activities and projects that they're trying to do.
Okay, so mine's a rather long question. So my question relates to the finances and to the health of AMS Incorporated. So given my time here at Queens, I'm going to spread the numbers that I have back through my time at Queens, all the way back to fiscal year 2008, and I'm presenting these as aggregate numbers, and they're all taken from the AMS annual reports and financial statements. Over that time, both Common Ground and the business of Tricolor Outlets, formerly TAMS, formerly Used Books Store, etc., have posted total losses of over $100,000 each, whereas Walk Home and Queens Student Constables have posted profits of $48,000 and $42,000 respectively over that time period. Do you feel that it is appropriate that these services, both fundamentally different in mission and business practices, appear on an equal footing in financial statements of the AMS, and also that aggregate numbers combine these results?
Starting with Bryor.
Yeah, I would agree that it's fine for them to be on equal financial footing. I really believe in the idea that all services here should aim to balance out at zero, and that the idea of doing that on 3-year plans and moving gradually towards that allows the flexibility to move towards that, and all the time and strategic planning needed to balance out those services.
Thank you for the question, Mackenzie. I appreciate it. Obviously, we don't like seeing deficits in our services. Over $10,000 for each of Kogo and Tricolor is obviously unfortunate and not something we like to see. However, you have to see the trend of increasing or decreasing deficits in those two services that we've been seeing over the past couple of years. I do agree that it is fair to see them on equal footing. They both provide important services to the Queens community. And it's important that the AMS provides those services to students. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question, Mackenzie. Yes, so I do think it's very important that we look at these services on equal footing. One thing that I think is very important when looking at AMS corporate is that the corporate side of the AMS is one business itself. I would categorize the services as different departments of this one business because they all do come down to the same bottom line. In terms of deficits, obviously it's not ideal to have a large deficit at one service or another, but given the examples that you provided, for example, Tricolor Outlet is a brand new service that just opened recently, although it was the amalgamation of others before. You do need to give a service time to gain life and to get past that zero line. And I don't think it's fair to judge one based on 1 year being open. Given that Tricolor Outlet did have a deficit of $50,000 last year, it's really not fair to judge that just based on the 1 year, I believe. To add to that as well, I know you spoke about Common Ground, which is one service that I think provides a very good example of one that took a lot of deficits in different years and then has risen over the past couple especially. So yes, I think it's very important to look at these on the same footing, and that, like I said before, all services are very important in different ways, and although we are trying to budget to zero always, I'd say that profit and deficit is not the most important aspect of any AMS service. Thank you.
The next question comes from Twitter. Comes from Ashley's predecessor, Ben Hartley. It reads, VP Ops, explain the AMS finances from top down. Differentiate between government versus corporate and assembly versus board. Starting with Duncan.
All right, thank you very much for the question, Ben. So a top-down look of what we're looking at there. So obviously we have our finances split up between the government and corporate sides, with both assembly and board allocated finances. For assembly allocated finances, those go towards our commissions and offices. So the SIC, the MAC, CIA, those funds are approved by assembly. With the corporate side, we have our board allocated funds, so all the strategy plans and budgets are passed through the board of directors of the AMS, and then those funds are approved for use by the board of directors. Again, those are for our services side, so Common Ground, Queen's Student Constables, all that good stuff. So yeah, that's how the division works between corporate and government, and how the different allocation processes work for both government and corporate sides.
Thank you for the question, Ben, if you're watching this. Okay, so I think I'll begin. So the AMS, as we know, is a $15.5 million corporation. It is divided into both corporate and government sides, but that's actually not the only way that you can divide this budget down. So I'll begin. The government side of the AMS is funded by student fees. So like we said, the assembly budget, like Ben asked for, actually comes from the AMS specific fee, which is about $68. And that money is allocated between the different commissions, the general office budget as well, on the government side. The important thing to remember with that is that it does all come from students' pockets directly. The corporate side is funded by revenue from the services, and service budgets are approved at Board of Directors every single year. So when somebody buys something at Common Ground, that obviously is included into the budget, and that's how the corporate side works. To kind of explain the finances from top down overall, I would divide them into the operational budget and the restricted funds. So the easiest way to understand this, I think, is that the operational budget is about $10 million, and that represents all of the money that we can sort of use and do use in 1 year. So that includes all of the corporate and government sides, actually, including all of your commissions, services, general office, which is like office supplies, the officers' budgets, on one side of the AMS. And that's kind of money that we use and goes in and out of the AMS every single year. On the opposite side, we have the restricted funds, which are the Health and Dental Fund, Student Center Fund, Accessibility Fund, and the Advantage Fund. And part of those funds are invested for long-term and short-term investments at the AMS. And other aspects are just to ensure that the AMS always remains transparent. For example, the Health and Dental Fund is kept every year and has about a $2 million budget, and just represents the money that goes in and out of the health and dental plan, and is used to show the surpluses and deficits that appear every single year. So yeah, AMS finances are definitely very complicated because it's a very large organization, but I find that that's kind of the easiest way to sort of break it down and understand it. Thank you.
Okay, so the important difference that just I would like to point out is just that the VP University Affairs does not report to the board about the government side. The VP University Affairs runs their own budget, their own management, and then on the other side we have the board of directors that's subservient to the assembly, that is in charge of all of the the corporate side, the services. Yeah, that's all I'll say on that.
Hi, everyone.
Whoa. We're too close. Hi.
Okay, testing. All right. That hurt me more than it hurt you, I promise. So a challenge for the marketing and communications offices has always been trying to ride the divide. There's a disconnect between the marketing and communications offices and AMS corporate services, reasons being not limited to simple geography, management structures in the services compared to the government, and simply differing priorities. What will you do to improve the work that marketing and communications can do to support AMS corporate services? Please provide one idea for each office, either marketing communications, or address changes that can be made within the services. Or if you're super ambitious, you can do both.
Starting with Tristan.
Great, thank you for the question, Amanda. So I think what we need to consider with these offices is that marketing and communications represent the entire society as a whole. It's one of the most important aspects of this society, and that they really create our brand. And I think this year's offices, you and Andrew, have obviously done an incredible job ensuring that the AMS has a very strong and distinct brand that needs to be continued in a consistent manner in the coming years as well. To talk about the services especially, all services do have a marketing manager or some form of marketing position, and services do have a kind of autonomy in their brands. I guess to provide an example, it's very important that any different service can differentiate from the others, and I think it is important that they're included under the AMS brand, but also that they have their own autonomy. So to provide an example, the AMS pub services are obviously a very different environment than Common Ground where we are right now. I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part of that question? Sorry. Is this on the time? Oh, wait.
What will you do to improve the work that marketing communications can do to support AMS corporate services?
Great, thank you. So I think it's very important that, as I was saying, it's very important that every aspect of the AMS fits underneath marketing communications. So I know that in the past there's always been a marketing caucus held on the corporate side of the AMS. I think it's very important that that's continued and the marketing officer be a resource for all marketing managers and can ensure that the brand at least remains consistent in some ways across, although the autonomy is very important as well. In terms of communications, I think it's really important that services, I think, use communications less than the government side do, but perhaps it should not be that way. And perhaps services should be ensuring that they're always communicating a positive image and can speak with communications office about that as well. So I would say that it would be beneficial to have a marketing caucus held for the services, but with communications present as well, and have both to talk about branding and how to ensure that you can maintain a consistent brand, but also how to present your services image and how to speak as well. I'd say is very important. Thank you for the question.
Okay, so we have a specific platform point addressing this issue. It's platform point 12, restructuring AMS office space. The basic issue here is that the communications and marketing offices don't have enough physical space for everyone to actually do their job in that space. So one thing that we want to see happen is, with the money coming in to renovate the JDUC, we want to see those spaces expanded sufficiently or relocated so that deputies are able to, well, basically work on a different computer than the marketing officer, because right now they have to share and they can't share. There just isn't enough room to share. So anyway, I encourage you to read that platform point. Thanks.
Thank you for the question, Amanda. Yeah, so obviously we have the marketing communication offices. They're currently important to both the government and the corporate side of the society. And obviously each service has a marketing manager, and they are autonomous in some regards in terms of creating their own marketing strategy for their services. As Tristan mentioned, there is marketing caucus that occurs with the marketing managers from each service, along with the marketing officer. I'd really be interested in having more of a focus on brand reinforcement and development, especially for newer services. If we can get that brand entrenched in the minds of students and really reinforced, I think we'll have a lot more success in making people aware of what we can offer students. As well, the marketing officer could also offer some more collaboration with the AMS brand itself and create more connections with the overarching AMS brand. For the communications office, I really like to see an individualized communication strategy for each service. Obviously, the way that you communicate for people for either for TAPS or for Wacom isn't going to be the same way. You're going to be trying to reach possibly a different audience for some of those services, and having an individualized communication strategy I think would be very valuable in ensuring that service is as widely known as possible.
Hi guys. Is it on? Oh, it's on. Okay. So many faculty societies offer services that duplicate those offered by the AMS. So some examples are the Tea Room offered by the Engineering Society, NSC, a print and copy shop offered by the Commerce Society. And sometimes these services are competing for the same customer base, and there's unhealthy competition. For example, last year the Tea Room experienced a greater than usual deficit because of the expansion of Common Ground. So do you feel that the AMS needs to work with other faculty societies to ensure that we are providing unique enough services so that we're not cannibalizing within our own student offered services?
Starting with Bryor.
Yeah, I think the best thing is to just forge good relationships with the faculty societies so that we can basically decide that if we want to move our products in a certain direction and they want to move their products in a certain direction, we can. Fundamentally, a university is a captive market, right? There's and issues with that around competition and how we want to coordinate. So I think basically it's just a matter of teamwork and sharing and not going in to deal with the faculty societies in a confrontational manner, even though we're potentially in a competitive situation.
Thank you for the question, Lauren. Obviously, competition between faculty societies and AMS is it can be an issue, especially when it hurts the bottom line of our faculty societies. I think it's very important to be providing unique services to students. And when the bottom line of a service is impacted, I think that's an opportunity for revisiting what the services and products that service is able to provide. Possibly changing something to provide a more unique service or a more unique product could be advantageous to both services, both AMS and faculty society services. And that way, that kind of diversifies kind of the market in terms of what's offered to students, and it allows the services to both kind of flourish as well. So I think that's probably a better way to look at it, as an opportunity for growth and diversification and to individualize offerings for products and services.
Great, thank you for the question. So I really do think that it's important that we, as the AMS, from a corporate perspective, first protect our own services. It's extremely important that we are able to ensure that they do well and that we can support the positive effects that a service of the AMS do have. Having said that, obviously it's not ideal by any means for one service to be running a deficit. I think for the question, it's very difficult to attribute a service's loss, though, to one other factor. So for example, we were talking about the tea room and common ground. I think it's extremely difficult to put complete, to completely say the result of common ground's success would be that the tea room was not as successful. The market's very large, especially in that coffee industry, so it's hard to attribute that to one thing or another, I'd say. Having said that, again, I think it's very important that we do work with faculty societies as much as possible and make positive relationships between service managers at those societies, as we do between the government models at each society as well. I know from my experience, working as common ground head manager, I had a very positive relationship with the tea room managers as well. It was something that we actually share a lot of the same products and could share resources when necessary as well. But yes, I do think it's extremely important we make those positive relationships and then do consider the services that we are all offering together. Thank you.
All right, hi. My name is Jillian. I'm the AMS Student Center Officer. Given that phases 2 and 3 of the Queen's Center will not be moving forward, what specific plans would you like to implement in each Student Life Center facility to compensate for the promised developments which will not be forthcoming? Please use original ideas rather than building on initiatives already in progress.
Beginning with Duncan.
Thank you for the question, Jillian. As you might have read in our platform, we are planning to increase the amount of performing arts space and bookable club space in the JDUC through a new construction project using funds allocated between the university and the AMS. So that's going to be looking to improve the amount of space that we have. Also, that agreement also will be increasing the amount of maintenance that's going to be happening in the JDUC. Obviously, maintenance have been deferred because the Queen Center was being constructed, and it was believed that the part of the JDUC would be torn down and then built over again. Now that maintenance will be occurring again, so hopefully that'll bring some new life to the building and remove some of the structural problems that we've been seeing, such as leaking roofs, things of that nature. I think it's really important that we emphasize some of our other buildings to kind of compensate for the fact that Queen Center won't be coming anytime soon, or ever for that matter. McGillivray Brown is a building that can serve as a big center for both intramurals as well as clubs on this campus. And that's a very important fact that we need to emphasize with students on this campus. It can serve as another hub of student life, and it should, because it obviously has been recently renovated this year by the current management, and we should take advantage of that fact. With the Queen Center as is right now, obviously we have a lot of club space that's been in use since Queen Center opened. I think that's a great thing. One of our other major platform points is to kind of increase the sustainability of student life buildings that we have on campus here through the replacement of windows, especially in the JDUC. There's a large opportunity for decreasing utility costs through better windows. Currently, a lot of them are a little bit shifty and are allowing a lot of heat loss. That's not something we want to see. We want to see that utilities costs decreased. In addition, we want to see motion sensing lights or motion sensors attached to lights to be installed as well in our student life buildings. When activity isn't present, there's no one walking by, the lights will automatically turn off. Again, we'll save utilities and be more environmentally friendly. And that's something, a real initiative that we're really behind and we support fully.
Great, thank you for the question, Jillian. So yes, the Student Life Center is an extremely important aspect of the AMS now. I know we've talked about this a lot. Now that we have management of the buildings, it's very important that we take good care of them, of course. So I think I'll start by kind of explaining, actually maybe referencing a conversation I had speaking with Jillian and Megan McDonald actually about these buildings, because I think they see these buildings in a very different way than many other people do, and see the feelings associated with one space over another, and why that's important, and why we need to ensure that we cater the spaces to be positive and welcoming always to any student that wants to come inside. So I think to kind of begin, I'll begin with the JDUC. So we now have $1.2 million to spend on the JDUC. That is actually $1 million with a $200,000 contingency fund. I think to begin with that first, it's extremely important that all of that money is spent to ensure that the JDUC can be used over the next 10 years. We're actually going to be in the JDUC for a long time now that Queen Center phases 2 and 3 are no longer being completed. So I think it would be very irresponsible to spend all of that money on one large project. Rather than consulting with many students first and determining where that money should be spent to make these buildings a more positive space that we can use for the future as well. To kind of on the other side of the JDUC, the Queen Center as a brand new building. And I know that a lot of critiques that people have had of this building is that it's very sterile feeling. And I think that's something that can be very easily addressed. And having spoken with the Student Life Center team, I know you said not to reference things that are already happening, but they're putting up murals throughout the entire building. I think it's very important to continue projects like that to make this space as welcoming and homey feeling as the JDUC is. Mac Brown was actually just renovated recently this past year. I think it's very important that we continue our partnership with athletics and recreation to ensure that this space can be used over the next number of years as well. Because at the moment, it hasn't actually completely been finalized as to what will be done with all the spaces there. And then the last building, the Grey House, 51 Bader Lane, is a actually heritage site in Kingston. I know that there's a lot of repairs that need to be done in this building, and I think we should really consider the safety of the building as well, and what we should do with it for the future. Whether renovations are necessary, what we should be doing, whether clubs should be given space where there is space in the Queen Center as well. I think the Grey House needs to be a big question over the next year as to what the AMS should be doing with that space for the future as well. But again, that's not something that we as an executive should make the executive decision on. That really needs to be decided by many different parties and with the consultation of all the clubs present in those facilities as well. Thank you.
Okay. So there are quite a few things that we want to use this fund for. To begin with, as I said, we want to renovate AMS office spaces, the IT office, the marketing office. We also want to move the peer support center into the old AMS boardroom and install soundproofing so that it can remain confidential and definitely become confidential and be a even safer space. We're also interested in seeing if there are any improvements we can make to Alfies and continue to make that service better. Okay. There is also, we do support the idea of helping out intramural space in Mac Brown. We like a lot of GPP's ideas about small improvements like windows and sustainability in that regard. We're also slightly concerned about the frequent flooding problems in McGilvery Brown Hall, and we're wondering if those have been addressed, and if not, if those should also be addressed, because that's been a recurring theme over the last few years. And also, just notice tonight, hey, the sound system in here is really bad. Maybe we could invest in a better sound system in Cogro.
As I'm sure you know, the AMS has a collection of investments, and so my question is, do you believe the AMS should include ethical considerations when deciding which companies, initiatives, or programs to invest in? And if so, what are your strategies for auditing our current investments and strategies for investing in future companies?
Starting with Tristan.
Great, thank you for the question. So yes, the AMS does invest in many different companies. There's a large list that you can look through of all of our different investments, but they are relatively, I mean, from a business perspective, relatively minuscule amounts invested in each company. So you'll have like a $2,000 investment in Rogers. I don't know if that's the exact number, I'm just saying as an example, and in many other corporations as well. I think given that we are representing an entire student body, it is very important that we do consider ethical investment. I think that's something that Queen's University should also consider, actually. And given that I think there have been some unequitable choices of where to invest in the past, it's something that we should definitely look at as an executive for the future. I would really say that that's something that the board of directors in coordination with the executive can look at together. And I do know that our investment broker is very willing to invest in any corporation that they would like us to. So yes, I think it's something we should definitely look at. As for method, I know that in the past, certain companies have been brought to referendum as to whether the student body agrees to investing in those corporations. I think that would be an important way to go about doing this, because when we think about the AMS, the student body are our biggest stakeholders, and we are getting a lot of our revenue from the student body itself. So I think it would be important to pose those questions to the body as a whole, rather than decide them for ourselves as well. Thank you.
So a couple of years ago at an AMS assembly, I got to witness a discussion about whether a referendum question should be included about divesting Queen's investments or AMS investments in the oil sands. One interesting thing that came up in that discussion was the idea that it was not in the self-interest of students to see that happen because they would be losing jobs. However, I think there's a real problem with this thinking, because sometimes we confuse self-interest with short-term self-interest, and I think those are two different things. If you look at it, it's really in your self-interest not to live in a world that's been destroyed by global warming. Like, that is I mean, we don't want to live in a world where Beijing is under sea level and where rice crops have failed because of temperature changes. We don't want that. That will cause extreme disruptions all across the world. It's a really huge problem. But because that's long and far away and it doesn't seem to immediately affect us, we don't imagine that's in our self-interest. That's just not true. So ethical investment, I think the method behind it is redefining self-interest out of the short term and thinking what in the long term about what matters.
Thank you for the question, Adam. GBP strongly believes in student consultation, and I think it's really important to consult student groups as well as the CES on this matter. Student groups have a lot to contribute in terms of research and information to this very important issue. And I do believe that we should take ethical considerations into account when we're investing our student funds. We are representing students, and it's important we do that appropriately and effectively with ethical considerations in mind. Obviously, we will have to do this in conjunction with our board of directors and the executive, with research done by the board of directors, but we absolutely must consult student groups in this matter, because they do have a stake in this, because their student dollars are at work for the AMS.
Hello again. Okay, my question for you. In your position as VP Operations, you oversee hundreds of employees, all of whom follow a progressive discipline system and receive demerits when they violate their employees' policies. When a staff member has received 12 demerits, their employment is unfortunately terminated. I have just received 12 demerits and unfortunately need to be fired. So if the VP Ops candidates can please demonstrate how you would fire me right here on the spot.
Starting with Bryor.
Well, to begin with, I wouldn't fire you right here on the spot because this is in public. I would take you aside to somewhere sufficiently confidential and safe. And then I would say, Ashley, we've received a sufficient number. We've gone through the process here, and unfortunately, we need to replace you. It's really hard for us because we really like you, and it really sucks when this happens. And I want you to know that there's no hard feelings. This is part of the process. It's a policy. We're following it. Very sorry.
Thank you for the question, Ashley. Ashley, it's come to my attention that through our discipline system of demerits, you've accumulated 12. Unfortunately, this means that you'll be let go from your current position. We really appreciate all the work you've put into your current position. However, based on our discipline system, we'll have to let you go. I will be providing you with some support services. If you'd like to talk with our human resources officer or the general manager, I'd be more than willing to give you their contact info. Thank you very much.
It's kind of an awkward situation. I think one thing to kind of preface before I actually fire you, Ashley, we have to remember that the AMS terminates on a, what am I trying to say? Terminates without cause. And as such, we have to be careful that we protect ourselves as well in these situations. So I think it's important to keep these very brief and to kind of do it like this, I suppose. So the AMS does terminate without cause. Thank you for your time with the Alma Mater Society. Unfortunately, we do have to terminate your contract effective immediately. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact the Human Resources Officer. Her office is at the end of the hall, and you can speak with her as well. Thank you. Sorry.
The next question comes from Sean Abraham on Twitter, and it reads, what are your thoughts on the controversy around the naming of Elfies? Do you want to change it? Why or why not? Starting with Duncan.
Thank you for the question, Sean. This has been obviously an ongoing issue with our TAP services regarding the naming of Alfies. Obviously, there are concerns. Alfie was a member of the Queen's community back in the early 1900s who was marginalized, let's be honest with ourselves here, and made to sleep with a bear in the heating room of Jock Carty Arena. He was treated as a mascot of this university, and quite frankly, it wasn't appropriate. Absolutely not. However, the dedication of the Alfie's name to that pub service was made in order to remember his contribution to the Queen's community. It wasn't made to remember the discrimination that he faced or racism he faced at this university. is meant to commemorate the service he gave to this university. This is a sensitive issue. I recognize that. However, I do believe the Alfies should stay to its current name and that it should not change.
Great, thank you for the question, Sean. So yeah, obviously this has been quite a contentious issue for the past number of years. I mean, this is a question that comes up at every VP Ops debate I've seen while my time at Queen's. So I think it's something that we definitely have to consider. I mean, as Duncan said very well, Alfred Pierce lived at Queen's in the early 1900s. And I think that Alfies was named in recognition of his efforts at this university and was meant from a positive respect. I think we should definitely consider this as an option, given that it has been a big question for the past number of years, and given that it must be a concern to many people here, and I think validly it is a concern to many people here, we should definitely consider the name change as an option. Having said that, again, I don't think this is something that we can necessarily decide ourselves. I think this does need to be something that's posed to many others as well to decide what is best for this establishment. Having said that, at the time, I think that next year could bring a really great opportunity to rebrand Alfies as well. I think that Alfies really should be the #1 place to go in Kingston for all students at Queen's. Given that there's no cover at Alfies, I don't know why you would want to go anywhere else but there. And I mean, it really should be the case that that's the most desirable place to go out at night as well. So I mean, this would be a good time to do that, I suppose. But I think it's definitely something that we have to take concern over and definitely assess if we are elected to represent the AMS. Thank you.
So to begin, because this is a major point of our platform, I would like to point out that there are currently groups on campus that are not comfortable entering Alfies because of the name and because of the historical marginalization of Alfred Pierce. Now, we want to change that to make make those students comfortable. That's one reason. Two, we think there are better ways to remember Alfred Pierce than to name a nightclub after him. We think he deserves his full name on a room or some other full recognition of him. The other thing is, frankly, Alfies is a bad brand. If you look at QP, Queen's Pub, you know what you're getting. Pub food, pub experience. It's good you know what you're getting. Common ground, coffee. It's a meeting place, sharing coffee. Very clear. Publishing and copying center, there's nothing ambiguous about that. Alfies? What does that tell you about that place? How do you market that? You'll notice on a lot of the advertisements for Alfies on campus that they actually avoid using the name Alfies. You can go walk by the AMS offices, you'll see a poster at the stairs that says the A Lounge Alfies, right? A Lounge, and then Alfies is only a little subheading. There can be a brand that tells you what Alfies does, a better brand that lets you know that it's a great place to go on campus, that it's really fun, and it can be a much clearer brand, and that will really help out that service in the long term. Because right now, it's a weak brand. There's no signage. There's no way of knowing that except word of mouth, and when you hear it by word of mouth, you're not sure what you're getting. We need to improve it.
Hello again. So this is a question that's near and dear to my heart. This was the first in 3 years that an annual report was produced by the Alma Mater Society and put to print. When it has been produced, it is known within transition manuals as being an incredibly difficult project for the communications officer who chairs the annual report editorial board with the vice president operations, the general manager, the chair of the board of directors, the controller, and the information officer. Please identify some of the challenges that may prevent the annual report from being produced, and aside from ruining your communications officer's summer, what will you do to make sure that an annual report is produced next year?
Great, thank you for the question, Amanda. So yeah, I think that the annual report is a very important document or booklet actually that was created this year. It's important that we are able to provide all of our financial information to our constituents, so the student body at Queen's. And I think it's something that a lot of people would really benefit from having, in that then they can know exactly where their money is going. And that's what these financial reports are really for. I think something that's a huge challenge with it, and I think obviously you would be able to speak to this more than I can, that it has to be extremely visual appealing as well. And you have to make this document something that people will actually want to read as well. And I don't know if many people would want to sit down and read through an entire list of numbers and budgets. And quite honestly, that's not the most accessible way to provide it as well, because a lot of people probably don't know exactly what this massive consolidated budget means. So presenting it in a very visually appealing way. I think it's something that has to be a collaborative project, and like you're saying, there is a board that does so, but it's very important that the VP Ops work closely with communications, as well as the president, to ensure that we're represented in a realistic and positive light, and that all of these, all the information is presented in a visually appealing way as well. Yes, thank you for the question.
So again, I'd like to refer to our platform about increasing the size of the marketing and communications offices. When the deputies are able to work as well, they can put in more work, they can help get that report out. Again, what's holding, I know that's a big problem, is just simple physical space and how difficult it is to work in that space and how much work you can get done because of the nature of where that office is. We want to improve that. We have a specific point about it. That's all I'll say.
Thank you for the question, Amanda. I do agree the annual report is a very important part of the society, and I think it should happen again next year. As Team GPP, we really do value transparency and communication. It's really something we really stand for, and this is a great way to let our constituents know what went on in the previous year and what occurred with the finances. I think the biggest issue in terms of actually creating the document itself is actually knowing everything that went on in the previous year. It's hard to know what every minute detail that occurred and trying to put it into one document. It's incredibly difficult. So I think what really needs to happen is to improve the transition process and improve transition manuals and information that's passed down basically to the next people. If we can do that, I think we can actually make a general report that will be able to be printed on a yearly basis much more effectively.
So, although my position oversaw it this year, normally the IT office is overseen by the VP Operations because of a large amount of collaboration it has with the corporate services. So, two-part question. In your view, what is the biggest problem facing the services from an IT perspective? And secondly, what is your favorite programming language and why?
Beginning with Bryor.
Yeah, I think a big problem is knowing what exactly it does. There's a lot of problem with communications. For example, clubs aren't usually told that they actually get a space on the IT office's servers for their club website. They can actually utilize that, but often they're not told and they don't know, so they go with some other organization to host their site. As for programming languages, I know I've only ever used a particular one in a single audio analysis program, and I don't know what it's called, but I like it.
Thank you very much for the question, Kieran. I think one of the biggest issues facing the services in terms of IT is actually the point of sale system for the tricolor outlet. Currently, it has an issue with consignment. It doesn't really work that well. The older version that we used to have worked much better, I believe, with consignment. So there is an issue with that. And I think we should be really looking into a system that might be able to serve our service better. In terms of a programming language, I like Java because I like coffee. So there's that.
Great, thank you for the question, Kieran. So I think IT problems facing services, actually like Duncan said, a lot of the problems services have are definitely with their POS systems. To speak specifically about Tricolor Outlet actually, I know that they're using Squash right now, which is a system that is one of the very few that you can actually use for consignment, and that's the reason why they do use it right now, and they're able to actually integrate many of their other services into that same POS system as well. But in other services for sure, I know that there are a lot of IT problems with POS systems. However, that is partially dealt with by POS Canada, a company that supplies all of our POS machines, and then partially by the IT office can be worked with as well. So that's something I think I know I found when I was a manager, it was very helpful to speak with the IT office about that kind of thing, because I'm technologically not savvy at all. And I suppose that brings me to the second part of this question, my favorite computer language thing that you're talking about. I wish I knew one. I really like the matrix code. Maybe.
All right, so as you know, the AMS currently has more than 100 student fees, some of them mandatory, some of them subject to individual opt-out. So I have a two-part question. One, given that these fees total more than $900, what will your exec do to ensure that the AMS is financially accessible to all students? And two, what steps will your exec take to ensure that all of these student fees properly represent all students at Queen's?
Duncan.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your question, Jeff. Obviously, we do have some of the most student fees of any university in Canada. To make it more accessible for students, obviously we do have the AMS bursary for our student fees specifically. I think to make it more accessible, I would really would suggest people opt out of fees if they are unable to pay for them. A lot of our fees are opt-outable. And for people who are looking for a break in terms of that, I would definitely look into that option. I'm sorry, I forget the second part of your question. Yeah. To that, I would say again, it is up for it is up to the students to vote in student fees and to renew student fees. It's up to students to educate themselves about the issues of those student fees and whether they best represent the interests of the student body. So it is up to the journal to provide information. So they publish a little blurb about what the student fee is, and it is up to students to read that blurb and vote according to what they believe.
Great, thank you for the question, Jeff. So yes, as you were saying, there are a lot of student fees that really do fund a large part of the AMS for sure. So to answer the first part of your question about making the AMS financially accessible in terms of student fees, I know that there was, as Duncan mentioned, a bursary instituted this past year. I think we should reassess the process of allocating these bursaries because it was a new initiative and being able to install good criteria for how it will be allocated, so it's done in a good manner. And to answer the second part of your question, to ensure that student fees properly represent the student body, I think to begin with the mandatory fees, many of those come directly to the AMS. Some actually are diverted to other organizations as well. So for example, a very large one, the athletics and recreation fee, goes straight to athletics and recreation, and we don't really have any oversight over it at all. However, the ones that we do, it's very important that money is spent responsibly and that we do keep very good track of how our finances are operating. And so I think something that I feel very strongly about is that the budgeting process in every commission and service in the AMS and office as well actually is done in a very, very detailed manner so that we literally know where every dollar of people's student fees are going. In terms of the optional fees, many of which go to clubs, other organizations at Queen's as well, and some outside of the university actually, it's very important that, and I know something that is sometimes instituted is the VP Ops' authority to go through all applications to be put on the referendum and then actually decline certain ones if they don't see them as fit to serve the Queen's community. It is actually the responsibility of the Vice President of Operations to do so, to ensure that this money is actually going to be in some way positively affecting the Queen's community. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Tristan that very carefully selecting fees and making sure that they really are serving the community is very important. And on some level, it's hard because you have to be a little bit hard-hearted. You have to be able to be willing to say no. And that's hard. And it's especially hard to tell an organization, especially when that organization has gone through the process of gathering 750 plus signatures to get on that. So really, yeah, you have to be tough. The other thing I would say is if it's possible to make sure that the referenda questions are also clear, because oftentimes one of the great problems with referenda, this is in general, is that the questions can be very vague and it's really dependent on you doing your research. So making sure that the blurbs are sufficiently informative, I think, is a big issue as well. Yeah, and that's it.
Rebuttal, Duncan.
I'm actually going to disagree with Bryor on this one. Unless the blurb that's submitted with the nomination package for fee questions is like grossly uninformative and does not really provide any sort of benefit to the student community, I really don't believe that VP Ops should be striking those questions from the referendums. It should at the very least, go to assembly, if not to a society vote, and then students can take the action either vote for that student fee or not vote for it. It should be the student's decision primarily, and not the VP Ops position.
Rebuttal, Bryor.
Yeah. Again, the important thing there is the idea of decision. It has to be an informed decision. So and that's something that in terms of how the referenda is constructed, we have to make sure that students are able to make an informed decision. I don't think it's right to politely offer the information. We have to really make sure they know what it's for.
Hi, everyone. My question is this. The first round of AMS applications for corporate services involves a written set of questions before the applicant pool is cut down for the interview process. However, written questions can prevent great applicants from getting to the interview round, especially if English is not their first language. Under your executive, how will you mitigate this problem, especially since writing is not a required skill set for our services?
Starting with Bryor.
Yeah, it's a good question. Near and dear to my heart because I study linguistics and I've done work in second language acquisition, and I know how difficult to overcome language barriers can be. I think that one good thing would be to make sure that applicants revise their applications. The revision is a really, really important process for any piece of writing. So letting people know that they can get help, pointing them to, for example, the Writing Center. Those sort of actions, I think, will help overcome those sort of barriers. The other thing we can do is basically be conscious of the background and know that oftentimes what appears to be a severe seems to be an issue with language proficiency. It's actually really good to get people into positions because then they can get the confidence that they need. Then they can get the practice that they need. Because if you deny people that opportunity, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and people's language ability can actually fossilize, and that can be very problematic.
Thank you for the question. I think it is, again, this is a big thing. You can't assume someone's identity based on their application. When you're reading over an application, it's the three things that you're looking for are content, their ideas, and their commitment to the position. You're not looking for a perfect essay when someone's writing these written questions. Those are the three things you should be judging on only in terms of moving on to an interview. You can't be assuming someone's identity based on their written application.
Great, thank you for the question, Rachel. So I know this is what you're referring to is actually the pre-screening process for applications at the AMS. So we actually get hundreds and hundreds of applications for all of the services here. And it makes it very difficult to cut down to a certain number of interviews so that you can hire a really, really good staff for your service. So I know having done this process myself as well, Rachel, I completely understand that it's often difficult and some good applicants probably do get screened out in this process for sure. As you mentioned, in terms of people who who aren't able to write quite as well. That's actually something that I hadn't thought about before, and something that I think we should definitely assess, given that the way we do this process, there is no, when you get the applications, there's no name given on at the top of each one, so you can literally only see what they've written. And to kind of disagree, actually, Duncan, with what you were saying, I think in the services it's very important that we look for some personality in the applications as well. And you have to look for something that makes somebody unique and different than all the other 600 ones that you're reading through, because oftentimes you get a lot of the same answers. So I think perhaps some of the ways that we can improve this process are doing a better screening process for the questions that we actually ask. I know that sometimes they're very general, and it makes it difficult to differentiate between different people's applications. Having said that as well, I guess we are being inaccessible, and that if somebody isn't as good a writer or has a language barrier of some kind, which does not mean that they can't work for one of our services, that puts them at a disadvantage. So I think this is something we should definitely look at again and reassess in the coming year with our Human Resources Officer as well. Thank you.
We will have one more question from the floor before debate concludes for this half of tonight's debate. Amanda Judd, the AMS Communications Officer, will be at a booth right behind you. She's available to talk about opportunities in the AMS, both paid and volunteer positions. I'm sure she would love for you to pepper her with questions. So our last question comes from Allison Sprout.
Hi, I'm Allison Sprout. Okay, so what is the difference between the administrative pub ban and the tribe pub ban? Especially touch on the difference in the way, in how they are administered and the goal of each. And I can repeat that if it was unclear.
Duncan.
Thank you for your question, Allison. A tri-pub ban is given by a committee that consists of the VP Ops, the HNS director, the head StuCon, and the ban basically bans an individual from the three pubs on campus, so Clark Hall, Alfie's, and QP, for a period of 12 months, 12 months, I believe. And an administrative pub ban is an automatic ban that occurs when you start a fight, or for something where campus security, or for something that doesn't endanger the liquor license of Queen's University. So that, I believe, is a 1 month automatic ban, I believe, and that occurs automatically when an instance like that occurs.
Great, thank you for the question. And obviously this is a very important issue with our services, because the reason why these bans exist, I think I'll start with, is because of our liquor license, and they're really there to protect the liquor license. Given that we are running all student-run bars, so we've got the Queen's Pub and Alfie's, and then Clark Hall Pub actually fits under this liquor license as well, it's very important that we have some kind of discipline policy to ensure that we can protect those licenses. Administrative and tri-pub bans can be allocated by managers at the Queen's Pub or Alfie's, as well as the head StuCon, as well as the Hospitality and Safety Services Director, and the Vice President of Operations. And they do go through a committee as well in order to be approved. And I know that 50% of these bans are actually go through to non-academic discipline as well, depending on the case. And some can vary from a 1 month ban to much longer, obviously, as well. I know that tri-pub bans really do include a ban from all of the Queen's Pub, Alfie's, and Clark Hall Pub, and that is what differentiates. Thank you.
Yeah. So all I'd like to say is you can be banned from pubs for also a couple of reasons. For example, there's a policy in place that if you harass someone, if you make basically hateful comments, that can, like hate speech, that kind of stuff, that can get you banned as well. So it's not purely about protecting the liquor license. It's also about protecting people's rights while they're in the campus pubs as well.
That concludes the first half of the debate. We will break for 10 minutes.